If you've ever wondered how leaders rise to power and maintain control, what they do behind closed doors to outwit their enemies, or how modern power dynamics still mirror the strategies of centuries-old political philosophy, you're in the right place. Machiavelli's The Prince has sparked controversy for over 500 years. Why? Because it throws out idealistic notions of leadership and instead provides a brutally honest blueprint for how rulers, and by extension, if you've ever been curious about how Machiavelli's teachings still apply today, and how deception isn't just a political strategy, but a tactic used by modern business leaders, celebrities, and even regular people, we're going to break it all down today. But here's the kicker. Is it possible to use Machiavellian strategies responsibly? That's the question we'll be answering in this video. From social media manipulation to corporate strategies, Machiavellian tactics have evolved. We'll explore that in this video, so stay with me. But before we jump into it, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Show us some love by hitting that super thanks button. It helps the channel grow and keeps us creating great content for you. Now, let's get started, shall we? Niccolò Machiavelli has had a profound influence on political theory and remains relevant even in today's modern world. The reason for this enduring relevance lies in the core ideas that Machiavelli presents in the book, ideas that challenge traditional moral and ethical values, yet offer a pragmatic approach to the ruthless game of power. But why does Machiavelli continue to be so influential? What makes his thoughts on power, politics, and human nature still resonate with people across centuries? Let's take a closer look at the man behind the philosophy and why his ideas continue to captivate. Machiavelli was born in 1469 in Florence, Italy, during a time of political turmoil. The city was a republic, but it was constantly at risk of invasion or internal unrest. This environment, filled with political intrigue and power struggles, deeply influenced his worldview. In fact, Machiavelli's experience as a diplomat for the Republic of Florence, where he was involved in negotiations and political maneuvering, provided him with a front-row seat to the complex workings of power. A book that was not only about political strategy, but also about human nature and how people interact when striving for control and dominance. The Prince, written in 1513 but not published until 1532, is considered one of the most controversial works in political philosophy. Its central thesis is that rulers must be willing to do whatever it takes to maintain power, and that the ends often justify the means. This concept challenged the moral and ethical norms of the time, which emphasized virtues such as honesty, fairness, and justice. Instead, Machiavelli suggested that rulers should be cunning, manipulative, and even ruthless if necessary. In his eyes, the primary goal of any ruler was not to be loved or admired, but to maintain control and ensure the survival of their state. Machiavelli famously wrote that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved if they cannot be both. This statement suggests that fear is a more reliable tool for maintaining authority than affection or admiration, while love can be fleeting and dependent on the goodwill of others. Fear is a more constant force. This perspective on power reflects Machiavelli's understanding of human nature. People are self-interested and can easily be swayed by personal desire. Some even argue that his ideas have been used to justify authoritarian regimes and unethical leadership. However, despite these criticisms, The Prince has endured for centuries because it provides a realistic, no-holds-barred approach to understanding the complexities of power. Unlike many political philosophers who focused on idealized forms of government, Machiavelli grounded his ideas in real-world observations. He recognized that the world of politics is often brutal and that those who seek power must be prepared to make difficult and sometimes morally questionable decisions. The book's continued relevance is also due to its applicability to various aspects of modern life. While The Prince is often associated with political rulers and leaders, its principles can be applied in numerous contexts, including business, negotiations, and even personal relationships. In today's highly competitive world, where success often depends on one's ability to outmaneuver rivals, Machiavelli's strategies are still used by those seeking an edge. Business leaders, for instance, may employ Machiavellian tactics to gain a competitive advantage, such as using strategic alliances, manipulating market conditions, or undermining competitors. Politicians, similarly, Machiavelli's influence extends beyond politics and business. His ideas on human nature and power dynamics have been applied in psychology, sociology, and even the study of relationships. People constantly negotiate their place in the world, balancing their desires for control with a need for cooperation and trust. Machiavelli's teachings remind us that power dynamics are inherent in all interactions, from the workplace to personal relationships. Understanding these dynamics can be crucial for individuals who wish to navigate the complexities of social and professional life effectively. Machiavelli's thoughts on deception, in particular, are especially relevant in an age where information is constantly manipulated and public perception can be swayed by powerful media and social forces. In the digital era, where political campaigns, business strategies, and even personal brands are often shaped by carefully crafted narratives, the lessons from The Prince resonate more than ever. The ability to manipulate information, to present oneself in a way that garners support and control, is a skill that many leaders today still employ. Social media influencers, political figures, and corporate leaders alike understand the power of perception and the role that deception can play in shaping it. Despite the controversy surrounding Machiavelli's philosophy, there is no denying that his ideas have had a lasting impact. His work challenged people to think beyond the traditional moral framework and to recognize the practical realities of power. Whether one agrees with his conclusions or not, Machiavelli's insights into the nature of human behavior, authority, and political strategy continue to shape modern thought. In a world where manipulation, negotiation, and control are fundamental aspects of daily life, understanding Machiavelli's principles can provide valuable insight into how power is gained, maintained, and lost. The allure of Machiavelli lies in his ability to cut through the idealism and deliver a candid, unflinching look at power. He stripped away the veneer of noble virtue to reveal the often harsh truths of politics and leadership. In doing so, he created a framework that allows us to better understand the motivations and actions of those in power. By studying Machiavelli, we learn not just about the past, but about the timeless nature of power itself. It is this universality that keeps his ideas relevant to this day. As we continue to grapple with the complexities of leadership, politics, and relationships in the 21st century, Machiavelli's teachings remain an essential part of the conversation. Whether used as a cautionary tale or as a guide for navigating the murky waters of power, The Prince challenges us to confront the realities of our world and to recognize that, in the game of power, the stakes are high and the rules are often unspoken. It is this brutal honesty about the nature of power that ensures Machiavelli's place in the conversation about leadership, both past and present. Niccolò Machiavelli's legacy is both profound and controversial. As a diplomat, historian, and political theorist in Renaissance Italy, he carved out a distinctive place in political thought. His most famous work, The Prince, is often regarded as the foundation of modern political theory, especially in the realm of statecraft, power dynamics, and leadership. Machiavelli's ideas, however, have transcended their original political context and continue to be relevant today in various fields, including politics, business, and personal relationships. His work, which emphasizes pragmatic and often morally ambiguous tactics to achieve and maintain power, still resonates in the modern world. Born in 1469 in Florence, Machiavelli was a man deeply embedded in the political landscape of his time. Florence, a city-state frequently engaged in both internal and external political struggles, was the perfect breeding ground for Machiavelli's observations. His role as a diplomat in the service of the Republic of Florence allowed him to witness firsthand the intrigues of politics and power struggles. These experiences gave him a unique perspective on leadership, one that was often more realistic and pragmatic than idealistic. Unlike other political theorists of his time, who sought to prescribe moral guidelines for rulers, Machiavelli offered a strategy rooted in the harsh realities of governance, suggesting that the maintenance of power required manipulation, cunning, and, at times, ruthlessness. Machiavelli's The Prince offers a guide for rulers, advising them on how to acquire and retain power in an unforgiving world. His central message is that the ends often justify the means, especially when it comes to achieving political success. This focus on pragmatism over moral virtue was shocking for many of his contemporaries. Unlike philosophers who emphasized ethical leadership, Machiavelli argued that a ruler's actions should not be judged by moral standards, but by their effectiveness in maintaining power. His advice was clear. If a ruler needed to use deceit, cruelty, or manipulation to achieve their objectives, they should do so without hesitation. The Prince presents a blueprint for political maneuvering that is grounded in real-world tactics, where maintaining control and stability supersedes adherence to traditional moral codes. One of the key reasons why Machiavelli's ideas continue to hold value is the timelessness of the principles he outlines. His work transcends time and culture because it is based on the unchanging nature of human behavior. Machiavelli believed that people are driven by self-interest, and that understanding and manipulating this inherent trait is essential to effective leadership. This insight into human nature has allowed his strategies to be applied not only in political spheres, but in business and personal relationships as well. The idea that individuals will often prioritize their own interests over loyalty or fairness is just as relevant in the corporate world today as it was in Renaissance Italy. In a world where competition for resources, influence, and success is fierce, Machiavelli's advice on power acquisition, strategic alliances, and the manipulation of perception remains crucial. Politicians, businessmen, and leaders across the world have incorporated Machiavellian principles into their strategies for maintaining power and achieving success. Take, for example, the political career of Winston Churchill. Churchill's ability to navigate the complexities of wartime diplomacy and maintain Britain's resilience during World War II demonstrates a mastery of Machiavellian tactics. His political maneuvering, his strategic alliances with the United States and the Soviet Union, and his ability to shape public perception through speeches and media all mirror the principles Machiavelli laid out in The Prince. Churchill's pragmatism in pursuing victory, even if it required shifting allegiances and making deals with countries that were once considered enemies, reflects Machiavelli's belief in flexibility and adaptation to changing circumstances. In the business world, many leaders have similarly embraced Machiavellian strategies to achieve success. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, is often seen as a modern-day Machiavellian figure. His ability to create and maintain a dominant position in the tech industry is a testament to his mastery of power dynamics and manipulation. Jobs was known for his intense focus on vision and perfection, but he also understood the importance of controlling the narrative and manipulating public perception. His ability to create an almost cult-like following for Apple products, even when they were not necessarily the most technologically advanced, shows a keen understanding of the role of deception and emotional manipulation in business success. Like Machiavelli's Prince, Jobs knew that the public's perception was often more important than the product itself, and he used this insight to build an empire. Another example can be found in the career of the media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch's influence over global media is a direct application of Machiavelli's principles of controlling information and shaping public opinion. His acquisition of numerous newspapers, television networks, and other media outlets has given him the power to influence political discourse and public sentiment across multiple countries. Murdoch's success can be attributed to his understanding of the importance of perception, his ability to manipulate narratives, and his ruthless pursuit of dominance in the media landscape. His career exemplifies Machiavelli's idea that the ruler must be willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals, including bending or breaking the rules when necessary. In the world of international diplomacy, leaders like Henry Kissinger, former U.S. Secretary of State, are often cited as examples of Machiavellian figures. Kissinger's realpolitik approach to foreign policy, where he often prioritized national interests over moral considerations, embodies Machiavellian thinking. His actions during the Cold War, such as his dealings with China and the Soviet Union, show a strategic willingness to form alliances with adversaries for the sake of achieving greater long-term goals. Kissinger's political career was characterized by an ability to navigate the treacherous waters of international relations, using a blend of pragmatism, manipulation, and calculated deception to secure the interests of the United States. Even in personal relationships, Machiavellian principles can be observed. The way people navigate social dynamics, manage reputations, and leverage alliances in personal and professional life often mirrors the strategies Machiavelli outlined. For example, in corporate settings, individuals may use networking and alliances to secure promotions or other career advancements, often downplaying their true intentions to maintain an image of cooperation and loyalty. Similarly, in interpersonal relationships, people may use flattery, charm, or even deceit to achieve personal goals, much like the manipulative tactics described in The Prince. Machiavelli's ideas on power, manipulation, and strategy are not just theoretical concepts confined to history books. They're practical tools used by leaders in every field to maintain control and achieve success. The beauty of Machiavelli's work lies in its versatility. His principles can be applied to a wide range of contexts, from politics to business to personal relationships. Whether one agrees with his ethical stance or not, it's undeniable that his understanding of power dynamics offers valuable insights into the way people interact and negotiate for influence. Machiavelli's influence can also be seen in the realm of leadership theory. Many contemporary leadership models, particularly those focused on strategic thinking and negotiation, borrow from Machiavelli's emphasis on flexibility, adaptability, and the manipulation of information. Modern leaders, in both public and private sectors, continue to draw from Machiavelli's playbook when navigating complex situations that require careful manipulation of people, resources, and perceptions. Ultimately, Machiavelli's legacy is defined by his willingness to break away from idealism and embrace the realities of power. His ideas remind us that leadership is not always about doing what is morally right, but about doing what is necessary to maintain control and achieve one's objectives. His work has left a lasting mark on the world, and his strategies for obtaining and holding onto power remain as relevant today as they were in the Renaissance. Whether in the corridors of power, boardrooms, or personal relationships, the tactics Machiavelli outlined continue to shape the way people approach leadership, strategy, and influence. In The Prince, Niccolò Machiavelli presents a series of political strategies and philosophies that challenge conventional notions of morality, ethics, and governance. His work is often regarded as the foundation of modern political realism, focusing on the harsh realities of power dynamics and how rulers must navigate them to achieve and maintain control. At its core, The Prince is a manual on how to acquire, consolidate, and maintain political power, and it is rooted in pragmatism rather than idealism. Machiavelli's theories have been widely debated over the centuries, with many criticizing his advocacy of deception and manipulation. However, his concepts continue to resonate, especially in situations where the preservation of power is the primary goal. To understand the lasting impact of The Prince, it's essential to delve into the central principles Machiavelli outlines and how they have been applied across political, social, and even business contexts. Machiavelli's most prominent and widely discussed principle is his focus on maintaining power at any cost. According to Machiavelli, the ultimate goal of any ruler is to stay in power, regardless of the methods required to do so. In this sense, he distances himself from other political philosophers who prioritize virtue and ethical behavior. For Machiavelli, morality and ethics are secondary to the maintenance of the state and the security of its ruler. This principle is encapsulated in one of his most famous quotes from the prince: "The ends justify the means." In other words, if a ruler must engage in deceit, manipulation, or even cruelty to secure their position, they should do so without hesitation, as long as it results in maintaining control over the state. This pragmatic approach to politics underscores the central idea that power is the most important commodity in governance. The concept of deception is another crucial element of Machiavelli's political philosophy. Machiavelli argues that rulers should never shy away from using deceit as a tool for achieving their objectives. In his view, people are inherently self-interested, and the truth is often an inconvenient obstacle to achieving political goals. Therefore, a ruler who relies on honesty alone is at a severe disadvantage. Machiavelli acknowledges that deception can take many forms, from simple manipulation of public opinion to outright lies and betrayal. A ruler who is skilled in deception can influence the actions of others, creating an image of strength or virtue when, in reality, they may be acting in ways that are quite the opposite. A famous example of Machiavellian deception can be seen in the actions of many political leaders throughout history. One of the most notable examples is that of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was not only a master of military strategy, but also a skilled manipulator of public opinion. Napoleon famously portrayed himself as a man of the people, championing revolutionary ideals, while simultaneously consolidating his own power and establishing an authoritarian regime. His ability to deceive the French population, convincing them that he was working for their benefit while simultaneously increasing his control over the state, is a textbook example of Machiavellian tactics at work. Napoleon's rise to power, through both military conquest and political maneuvering, showcases the utility of deception in the pursuit of power. Another key element of Machiavelli's philosophy is his idea of the necessary evil. In Machiavellian terms, a ruler must sometimes engage in actions that are morally questionable or even outright harmful to others in order to secure their position. These actions are justified by the end goal of preserving the state and maintaining power. Machiavelli famously argues that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved if they cannot be both. This statement highlights the idea that fear is a more reliable and stable source of power than love. A ruler who is loved may be abandoned or betrayed when circumstances change, but a ruler who is feared commands a level of respect and obedience that is harder to break. Fear, according to Machiavelli, is more enduring and less subject to the whims of others. The concept of the necessary evil extends beyond fear and includes actions that may be seen as cruel, immoral, or deceptive. Machiavelli's justification for such actions is rooted in his belief that the ruler's primary responsibility is to the state and its survival, not to the welfare or feelings of individual citizens. For example, in times of war or political unrest, a ruler may find it necessary to impose harsh measures, such as executions or forced conscription, in order to maintain order and ensure the stability of the state. While such actions may be seen as immoral by some, Machiavelli argues that they are justified by the need to secure the state and maintain the ruler's position. This ruthless pragmatism often leads to criticism of Machiavelli as being cynically amoral, but it also highlights the complexities of leadership in times of crisis. Machiavelli's emphasis on the necessity of moral flexibility is particularly relevant in the context of war and conflict. In times of war, the stakes are incredibly high, and rulers must be prepared to make difficult decisions that may not align with conventional notions of right and wrong. Machiavelli's advice to rulers in such situations is clear. They must be willing to act decisively, even if it means engaging in actions that are morally ambiguous. For example, during times of war, a ruler may need to make alliances with former enemies, betray allies for strategic gain, or use propaganda to manipulate public opinion. These actions, while deceitful, are considered necessary for securing victory and ensuring the survival of the state. This willingness to engage in morally questionable actions also extends to political negotiations. In diplomacy, Machiavelli advocates for a ruthless approach, where the end goal justifies any means necessary to achieve success. Negotiations with other states, according to Machiavelli, should be guided by the principle of gaining the upper hand, even if it means deceiving one's partners or breaking agreements. The idea that a ruler should never make promises they cannot keep, and should be willing to break alliances if it serves their interests, is a central tenet of Machiavellian diplomacy. A ruler who is too honest or too trusting in negotiations risks being outmaneuvered by more cunning adversaries. In today's world, Machiavellian principles can be observed in various political and business contexts. Politicians around the globe frequently use deception to manage their public image and maintain their power. Political campaigns, for example, often rely on carefully crafted narratives that manipulate voters' perceptions of candidates. In business, companies routinely use strategic marketing and public relations tactics to shape consumer opinion and outmaneuver competitors. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to manipulate public perception, modern leaders in both politics and business are masters of controlling the narrative and using deception to their advantage. One modern example of Machiavellian tactics in politics can be seen in the political careers of figures like Vladimir Putin. Putin has successfully maintained power in Russia for over 2 decades through a combination of strategic manipulation, deception, and ruthlessness. His ability to control the media, suppress political opposition, and manipulate public opinion are all examples of Machiavellian tactics at work. Putin's use of deception, particularly in his foreign policy, has allowed him to maintain his power and influence, both domestically and on the global stage. In business, the tech industry offers another example of Machiavellian tactics in action. Companies like Apple, under the leadership of Steve Jobs, have used deception and manipulation of public perception to create brand loyalty and outpace competitors. Apple's carefully orchestrated product launches, the secrecy surrounding new technology, Machiavelli's focus on deception and the necessary evil, reflects his belief in the importance of pragmatism in leadership. The world, according to Machiavelli, is a place where idealism and morality often fall short in the face of power struggles and political realities. While this approach has been widely criticized for its ruthlessness and cynicism, it remains a powerful and relevant strategy for those in positions of authority who seek to navigate the complex and competitive world of politics, business, and leadership. The principles outlined in The Prince remain a relevant and influential guide for understanding the dynamics of power, leadership, and negotiation. The use of deception, whether in the corridors of power or the boardrooms of multinational corporations, the tactics described by Machiavelli are still as effective today as they were in the 16th century. Machiavelli himself was one of the first to openly discuss the utility of deception in politics and leadership, emphasizing that rulers must be willing to do whatever it takes to secure their position. In The Prince, Machiavelli famously argued that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved. Moral guidelines or good intentions may not be sufficient for a ruler to remain effective. This is where deception becomes an indispensable strategy. Machiavelli's views on deception extend beyond the idea of simply lying. It's about creating illusions, shaping the narrative, and managing others' perceptions in a way that advances one's agenda, regardless of the actual truth. The manipulation of perception becomes key, with rulers and leaders molding events, messages, and actions to present themselves as stronger, more competent, or more virtuous than they may actually be. One of the most potent forms of deception Machiavelli highlights is the strategic use of appearances. A ruler, according to Machiavelli, must often mask their true intentions behind a veneer of honesty, integrity, or benevolence. This is crucial in establishing trust with allies, managing rivals, and cultivating loyalty from subjects. A ruler may need to abandon the act and reveal their true nature if it benefits them strategically. Machiavelli's concept of virtue, the ability of a ruler to shape their destiny through strength, decisiveness, and cunning, relies heavily on the use of deception. It's the ruler's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and use deception to maintain control of the narrative that differentiates successful leaders from unsuccessful ones. This adaptability also allows rulers to navigate situations where they may not have the full power or resources to win in an open confrontation. Instead, they can use deception to tip the scales in their favor, creating advantages out of seemingly unfavorable conditions. Deception, in the context of Machiavellianism. Deception can take the form of competitive positioning, strategic marketing, or the manipulation of public relations to shape a company's image. Businesses that excel in deception are often the ones who control their narrative most effectively. A prime example of this in modern business is Apple, especially under the leadership of Steve Jobs. Jobs was a master of controlling the perception of his products, creating a sense of exclusivity and excitement around Apple's product launches. Apple's marketing strategy is built on the careful crafting of an image of innovation, sophistication, and user-centric design. In reality, while Apple's products are often innovative, the company's success was built as much on its ability to create powerful narratives around its products as on the actual technology itself. Apple's presentation of its products as revolutionary and status-defining often overshadowed competitors who might have offered better technological features at times. The manipulation of public perception through marketing, the use of selective transparency, and strategic leaks or controlled information all represent forms of deception aimed at achieving a competitive edge. The world of politics provides perhaps the most vivid examples of Machiavellian deception. Historically, figures like Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and more recently, figures like Vladimir Putin have demonstrated the use of deception to maintain or expand their power. Julius Caesar's famous crossing of the Rubicon in 49 BCE was a masterstroke of political deception. Caesar knew that by crossing the Rubicon and marching on Rome, he was effectively starting a civil war, but he carefully managed the narrative to present himself as a defender of Rome's best interests, rather than a self-serving general. His ability to control the message, maintain a facade of legitimacy, and deceive his opponents about his true intentions helped him seize control of the Roman Empire. Similarly, Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power is also a direct application of Machiavellian deception. Napoleon used both military victories and strategic alliances to deceive his enemies and the French public into believing that he was the savior of the revolution, even as he worked to consolidate absolute power for himself. In the case of Vladimir Putin, the Russian president's use of deception is seen in his handling of both domestic affairs and international relations. Putin's leadership has been marked by a deliberate and calculated manipulation of the media, shaping public opinion to maintain his image as a strong and capable leader. His strategic use of misinformation and selective transparency has allowed him to remain in power despite criticisms of his authoritarian rule. Whether through the portrayal of Russia as a powerful and united nation in the face of external threats, or by discrediting opposition figures, Putin's use of deception has been a key part of his political strategy. He has consistently used manipulation to maintain a sense of national pride and legitimacy, even as his government engages in more clandestine, less transparent actions. From military interventions in Ukraine to the manipulation of electoral processes, Putin's strategic use of deception mirrors the core principles that Machiavelli outlined in The Prince. Even in the realm of diplomacy, deception plays a crucial role in shaping the outcomes of international negotiations. In modern diplomacy, leaders often engage in strategic deception to create favorable conditions for themselves and their countries. The use of diplomatic doublespeak, covert negotiations, and false assurances are all tools of deception in the hands of astute political leaders. For example, during the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union used deception as a tool to gain leverage in negotiations. The arms race was marked by the deliberate use of misinformation, false promises, and manipulations designed to gain a strategic advantage in the global arena. Leaders like Richard Nixon and Leonid Brezhnev engaged in complex negotiations where deception was employed not just to mislead the opposing party, but to maintain a sense of power and control over public perception. Deception, however, is not confined to grand political and business strategies. It also plays a crucial role in personal relationships, where individuals use manipulation to gain power or influence over others. This can manifest in various ways, such as through flattery, dishonesty, or emotional manipulation. People use deception to create certain images of themselves, such as presenting themselves as more successful, virtuous, or capable than they really are. In professional settings, individuals might downplay their weaknesses or exaggerate their strengths to secure a job, promotion, or favorable treatment. The use of deception in personal relationships can also involve concealing intentions, desires, or motivations, all of which are aimed at maintaining or gaining an advantage over others. The idea that people often manipulate situations to shape their relationships and influence others is not a new concept, but it aligns with Machiavelli's view that perception is everything and that those in power must always manage how they are seen by others. Another contemporary example of Machiavellian deception in business can be seen in the tactics used by various politicians and public figures who craft their image through careful public relations strategies. A modern example would be the rise of public figures like Elon Musk, who frequently uses social media and public statements to shape his narrative. Musk's strategic leaks, bold claims, and tweets often create waves in the stock market, affecting perceptions of Tesla's value and his own personal image. While some may view these actions as simply part of the modern celebrity business model, they are, in essence, a modern application of the kind of manipulation and deception that Machiavelli espoused. Deception is not without its risks, however. It requires a constant balancing act, as it is often difficult to sustain a false image indefinitely without it being exposed. The moment the truth is revealed, a leader or individual risks losing all credibility, which can result in the loss of power or influence. In The Prince, Machiavelli acknowledged this risk, but believed that a ruler who is astute and quick to act could often mitigate the damage and regain control. He argued that successful rulers must master the art of deception, but also know when to pivot, change the narrative, or abandon the deception altogether when it no longer serves their purpose. Ultimately, deception in the Machiavellian sense is about using perception as a tool to influence others and achieve one's objectives. Whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, the ability to manipulate how others perceive us or our actions can provide significant advantages. However, the use of deception must be handled with care, as it can easily backfire, especially in an era of increased transparency and access to information. Nevertheless, Machiavelli's teachings continue to provide valuable insights into the dynamics of power, leadership, and influence, demonstrating that deception, when used strategically, remains a vital tool for achieving success in an often harsh and competitive world. Throughout history, deception has been used as a powerful tool by political leaders, business moguls, and individuals alike to shape the outcomes of critical situations. From military strategies to business negotiations and personal relationships, the manipulation of perception, truth, and facts has proven to be an effective means of achieving specific goals. As much as deception is often viewed negatively, it is in many cases a pragmatic approach to achieving success when the stakes are high. In this analysis, we will explore several notable examples where deception was used to gain power, control, or victory, drawing from historical figures like Napoleon Bonaparte and Winston Churchill, modern business strategies, and real-life personal situations. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's most renowned military leaders, is a prime example of a figure who expertly employed deception to achieve his strategic goals. Napoleon's mastery of psychological warfare and his ability to manipulate his enemies and the public were crucial to his success. One of the most striking examples of his use of deception was during the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, one of Napoleon's most significant victories. Napoleon's forces were outnumbered by the Russian and Austrian troops, yet he managed to deceive the Allied forces into believing that his army was weaker than it truly was. He deliberately made his position seem vulnerable, luring the Allies into a trap. By using false signals, misdirection, and even feigned retreats, he enticed his enemies to attack, only to have them fall into his carefully planned strategy. Napoleon's ability to control the perception of his army's strength and intentions led to a crushing defeat of the Allied forces and further cemented his dominance in Europe. Another example of Napoleon's use of deception occurred during his campaign in Egypt in 1798. While he was attempting to conquer Egypt to establish a French presence in the Middle East, he used misinformation to create confusion among his enemies. Napoleon manipulated the media and exaggerated the importance of his campaign, hoping to mislead the British and Ottoman Empire into thinking that the French forces were stronger and more organized than they were. Although the Egyptian campaign ended in military failure, Napoleon's ability to manage perceptions kept him politically viable and allowed him to return to France, where he would eventually rise to power. These instances demonstrate how Napoleon used deception as a weapon to weaken his adversary's resolve, manipulate strategic outcomes, and maintain control over the narrative. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister during World War II, was another leader who utilized deception, though in a different manner. Churchill's use of deception was integral in shaping the course of the war, especially in the context of the Allied forces' strategies against Nazi Germany. One of the most famous examples of Churchill's use of deception was the Operation Fortitude campaign, which aimed to mislead Nazi Germany into believing that the Allied invasion of Europe would take place in Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. The Allies used elaborate ruses, including fake army camps, inflatable tanks, and fabricated radio traffic, to convince the Germans that the invasion would happen elsewhere. This successful deception played a crucial role in ensuring the success of the D-Day landings in 1944, ultimately leading to the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control. In addition to military deception, Churchill also used manipulation in the realm of diplomacy. His speeches and public appearances were designed not only to inspire the British public, but also to deceive both the Axis powers and potential collaborators. By portraying Britain as the last bastion of freedom in Europe, Churchill was able to rally support from the United States and other nations, thus ensuring that the Allies maintained their moral high ground and military resources throughout the war. Churchill's use of deception was not limited to tactical maneuvers on the battlefield. He also used it strategically to influence political decisions, garner international support, and shape public opinion during one of history's most trying times. In the world of business, deception is not confined to covert military operations or political maneuvering. Business leaders, particularly CEOs of major corporations, often use deception in their marketing strategies, negotiations, and business tactics to gain an advantage over competitors and secure favorable deals. One notable example is the way tech companies like Apple and Microsoft have strategically managed their public image and created a sense of urgency and exclusivity around their products. Steve Jobs, for instance, used controlled product leaks and secrecy around Apple's product development to create an aura of anticipation and excitement around new releases. By keeping product details under wraps, Jobs manipulated consumer behavior, ensuring that when new products were released, they were met with intense demand, even before potential customers had a chance to fully evaluate them. This strategy of using deception through secrecy and anticipation is still used by companies today. For example, Tesla, under Elon Musk's leadership, often generates buzz for its new products through limited public information, exclusive reveals, and calculated social media posts. Tesla's unveiling of new vehicle models, such as the Model S and Model 3, has been marked by carefully orchestrated events and leaked information, which has created an almost cult-like following among fans and customers. These tactics manipulate consumer expectations and create a sense of urgency, leading people to buy products without knowing all the details or seeing a full evaluation of the competition. In both cases, the use of deception has proven to be a successful business strategy, influencing market behavior and driving up sales. Another example of deception in business comes from the world of corporate mergers and acquisitions. When companies are negotiating takeovers or mergers, they often engage in strategic deception to mislead competitors, regulators, or even shareholders. In the early 2000s, the merger between AOL and Time Warner was seen as a high-profile case where deception played a key role in the outcome. Both companies were involved in complex negotiations, and one of the ways they manipulated the market was by inflating their projected earnings and overstating their growth potential. The goal was to make the merger seem like a promising investment to shareholders and regulators. Ultimately, the merger failed, and the company's exaggerated projections led to significant financial losses. This example illustrates how deception can be used not just in advertising, but also in corporate negotiations, where companies manipulate information to achieve desired outcomes, even if those outcomes are unsustainable in the long term. In personal relationships, deception is frequently used as a means to gain power, influence, or control over others. While the stakes may be lower than in politics or business, the fundamental principles of manipulation and deceit still apply. For example, in social dynamics, people often use flattery, charm, or emotional manipulation to gain favor or influence decisions. A common tactic in personal relationships is the use of white lies, which are designed to avoid conflict or make the person telling the lie appear more favorable. These lies can range from exaggerating one's achievements or abilities to withholding important information that might lead to uncomfortable situations. In more intense situations, individuals may use deception to gain power in their social circles. This can manifest in various ways, such as controlling the narrative around a group event, manipulating the opinions of others to maintain one's status, or using gossip and half-truths to undermine a competitor. In some extreme cases, individuals may use manipulation or deception to control their partners in romantic relationships. For example, a person might feign a level of vulnerability or affection to gain control over their partner's emotions, essentially making them more dependent on the relationship. These forms of personal manipulation are often subtle, but can have significant consequences for both the individuals involved and the social dynamic at large. One well-known example of personal manipulation can be seen in the behavior of certain influential figures who use their social standing to control others. People like charismatic cult leaders or high-profile figures in the entertainment industry often manipulate their followers through a combination of charm, promises of success, and deception. These figures use their power to convince others to invest emotionally, financially, or socially, often creating a one-sided relationship where the person in power benefits while their followers are manipulated for personal gain. Deception, in both its subtle and overt forms, remains a powerful force in human interactions across all levels of society. Whether in war, business, or personal relationships, the ability to manipulate the perceptions of others and influence their actions is an invaluable skill. While it is often criticized for its negative moral implications, it is clear that, when used strategically, deception can lead to significant advantages, whether it's securing military victory, increasing sales, or gaining social power. As these examples demonstrate, deception is not confined to any one domain. It is a universal tactic that transcends time and context, shaping the course of history, business, and personal dynamics. Deception, while often regarded as a strategic tool in politics, business, and even personal relationships, raises significant ethical challenges and has far-reaching consequences. Machiavelli, in The Prince, famously argued that rulers should be prepared to do whatever it takes to maintain power, even if it involves deception and manipulation. His emphasis on pragmatic, results-oriented leadership suggests that the morality of actions should be judged based on their effectiveness in achieving the ultimate goal. However, this approach neglects the profound ethical dilemmas and long-term consequences that deception can have on individuals, organizations, and societies. The use of deception, as Machiavelli promotes, can offer immediate rewards, such as securing political power, advancing business interests, or achieving short-term personal goals. However, the long-term ramifications of such strategies often create significant moral, emotional, and social costs that outweigh their initial benefits. One of the most critical consequences of deception is the erosion of trust. Trust is the foundation of all relationships, whether personal, professional, or political. When deception is employed, trust is compromised, and once broken, it can be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to rebuild. In the context of political leadership, the consequences of deception can be seen in the aftermath of scandals and betrayals. Politicians who rely on deception to manipulate public opinion, secure power, or maintain control may find themselves initially successful, but over time, they often suffer from the loss of credibility. Leaders who deceive their constituents may win battles, but they risk losing the trust of the people, which is vital for long-term success. For example, the Watergate scandal, which led to the resignation of U.S. President Richard Nixon, is a direct result of deception and manipulation within political circles. Nixon's deceptive actions, including the cover-up of the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, caused a deep loss of trust not only in his leadership, but also in the integrity of American politics. While the political manipulation in Watergate initially helped Nixon maintain power, the eventual public exposure of his deceit resulted in a massive erosion of trust in the government and the political system itself. In business, deception can yield similar negative consequences, especially when it comes to maintaining relationships with clients, employees, and stakeholders. Companies that deceive customers, whether through false advertising, misrepresenting product quality, or hiding vital information, may experience short-term financial gains. However, such deceptive practices can ultimately lead to reputational damage and the loss of consumer trust. The collapse of Enron in the early 2000s serves as a prime example of how business deception can lead to disastrous outcomes. The energy company's executives engaged in accounting fraud to deceive investors, employees, and the public about the company's financial health. While Enron's executives initially benefited from these deceptive practices, the eventual revelation of their fraud led to the company's bankruptcy, the loss of thousands of jobs, and widespread damage to the credibility of the corporate world. The consequences of this corporate deception were far-reaching, affecting the lives of individuals and the trust that people place in business institutions. The personal consequences of deception can be just as severe, particularly when it comes to relationships. In romantic relationships, deception can cause emotional harm, leading to feelings of betrayal, mistrust, and heartbreak. For example, infidelity, a form of deception, often results in the breakdown of relationships as trust is shattered. While the deceiver may initially believe that their actions are justified or even necessary, the damage caused by the deception can be long-lasting. In many cases, the deceived partner may struggle to trust again, either in that relationship or in future ones, because the betrayal has left an emotional scar. Even in less extreme cases, small lies or omissions can gradually erode the foundation of trust in a relationship, causing tension, resentment, and ultimately a breakdown in communication and understanding. Furthermore, deception in personal relationships can lead to a cycle of manipulation and control. In some instances, individuals may use deceit to gain power over others, creating unhealthy dynamics that can be emotionally damaging. This type of manipulation is particularly dangerous because it often goes unnoticed until significant harm has been done. For instance, in abusive relationships, one partner may use deception to maintain control over the other, making them believe they are incapable of functioning without the abuser's influence. This kind of emotional manipulation is corrosive and can have lasting effects on an individual's self-esteem and mental well-being. Ethically speaking, deception raises a number of questions about integrity, honesty, and accountability. Machiavelli's advice to rulers to embrace deception as a tool for achieving power overlooks the ethical implications of such actions. While it might be effective in the short term, deception undermines the moral fabric of both the individuals who employ it and the societies in which it takes place. The act of deceiving others is inherently dishonest, and it signals a willingness to prioritize personal gain over ethical behavior. Over time, this can lead to a breakdown of societal norms and values, as people begin to accept deception as a normal, even necessary, aspect of leadership and decision-making. One of the most profound ethical challenges that deception presents is the question of whether the ends ever truly justify the means. While Machiavelli argues that a ruler must use whatever tactics are necessary to secure power, this raises the issue of moral relativism, the idea that actions can be justified based on their outcomes, regardless of how they affect others. This view is troubling because it allows for actions that harm others to be excused in the name of achieving a greater good, which is often a subjective assessment. For instance, political leaders may argue that their deceptive actions are justified by the goal of preserving national security or achieving economic prosperity. However, this reasoning can easily be used to justify actions that violate human rights, deceive the public, or perpetuate injustice. The risk of deception becoming acceptable in certain situations is another ethical concern. When deception is used repeatedly and without consequence, it becomes normalized, and individuals may begin to view it as a necessary evil. This can lead to a culture where dishonesty is not only tolerated but expected, especially in environments where power and success are prioritized above all else. In such cultures, individuals may feel compelled to deceive others to fit in, gain favor, or advance their own interests. This erosion of ethical standards can have a corrosive effect on both individuals and society, leading to a loss of trust, social cohesion, and a decline in moral values. While deception may sometimes appear to be a necessary strategy, especially in high-stakes situations, its long-term effects are rarely benign. As Machiavelli himself pointed out, rulers must be vigilant in managing their reputation and controlling the narrative around their actions. However, when deception is exposed, it can lead to public outrage, loss of support, and the collapse of power structures. This is particularly true in the age of mass communication and social media, where information spreads rapidly and can be used to hold individuals and organizations accountable. The risks of deception are now greater than ever, as leaders and institutions are under constant scrutiny and can be swiftly exposed for dishonesty. Deception also raises significant questions about personal responsibility and accountability. When individuals or leaders deceive others, they're shirking their responsibility to act with honesty and transparency. They're choosing to manipulate reality rather than confronting it directly, which can have far-reaching consequences for their personal integrity and the relationships they maintain. Moreover, when the deception is uncovered, the deceiver must face the consequences of their actions, which can include damaged reputations, lost trust, and personal guilt. This moral accountability is a critical aspect of why deception is often viewed negatively, even when it may be effective in the short term. Ultimately, the use of deception in political, business, or personal contexts can lead to profound ethical dilemmas and long-term negative consequences. While Machiavelli's advice to rulers may offer practical solutions to securing power, it overlooks the deeper moral implications of deception. Deception undermines trust, fosters dishonesty, and can lead to the breakdown of relationships and institutions. In a world where trust is essential for cooperation and social stability, deception, even when used strategically, carries significant risks. The long-term effects of deception: loss of trust. The erosion of moral standards and the personal and societal costs often outweigh the short-term gains it may offer. Therefore, leaders and individuals must carefully weigh the ethical consequences of their actions and recognize that sometimes the pursuit of power or success cannot justify the harm caused by deception. Machiavelli's work, particularly The Prince, remains one of the most influential texts in the study of political strategy, leadership, and power dynamics. Although The Prince was written in the early 16th century, the core strategies Machiavelli described are still relevant today. In fact, in many ways, Machiavelli's ideas are even more applicable now in the age of social media, digital communication, and globalized politics. The principles outlined by Machiavelli, particularly those surrounding deception, manipulation, and the use of power, have evolved with the times, but remain foundational to the way leaders and organizations approach competition, governance, and influence. Machiavelli's central message in The Prince revolved around the necessity of power maintenance and the importance of adaptability in leadership. He argued that the ends often justify the means, which meant that rulers and leaders should be prepared to employ any tactic, whether morally acceptable or not, to secure and sustain their power. This notion of pragmatic, result-oriented leadership has transcended the political sphere into the modern world, where the pressure to succeed often leads to the deployment of similar Machiavellian tactics. In the contemporary world, leaders, especially in the realms of politics, business, and entertainment, continue to utilize the same principles, albeit in more sophisticated forms, especially through media manipulation, strategic communication, and brand management. The modern application of Machiavelli strategies is most visible in the political arena. Politicians today often employ Machiavellian tactics to shape public perception, maintain control, and secure electoral victories. Social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram have given political leaders the power to directly communicate with the masses, bypassing traditional media filters. This has created new opportunities for manipulation, as leaders can shape narratives, spin events, and control the public discourse to their advantage. The manipulation of social media and news outlets can create an artificial image of a politician or political movement, often crafting an illusion of popularity, integrity, or righteousness that may not reflect the actual reality. In the 2016 U.S. presidential election, the use of social media by candidates, particularly Donald Trump, was a direct application of Machiavellian strategies. Trump's campaign effectively utilized Twitter to bypass traditional media channels and communicate directly with his supporters. This allowed him to control the narrative and present a version of events that suited his agenda. His tweets, often provocative and controversial, kept him in the public eye, generating both support and criticism. Much like Machiavelli's advice to rulers to maintain a consistent public persona, Trump's use of social media created an image of a fearless, unorthodox leader who was always in control of the conversation. This strategy of dominating the narrative through deception and manipulation of the media landscape mirrored Machiavellian tactics designed to manipulate public opinion and rally support. Similarly, the spread of misinformation and fake news during elections has become another tool in modern political manipulation, which aligns with Machiavelli's endorsement of using deception to outmaneuver political rivals. The ability to sway public opinion through false narratives, misleading statistics, and fabricated stories is an extension of Machiavelli's idea that appearances are often more important than the truth. The increasing role of social media in politics has not only accelerated the speed at which information spreads, but also intensified the ethical dilemma of deception in politics. The digital age has created a world where deception is easier to implement and harder to detect, allowing political figures to engage in strategic manipulation with greater impunity. In the business world, Machiavelli strategies have been adapted to the modern, highly competitive environment of global capitalism. The corporate world is driven by a constant battle for market dominance, and companies often use Machiavellian tactics to manipulate public perception, gain competitive advantages, and secure financial success. Marketing, branding, and public relations are now sophisticated tools that companies use to shape consumer perceptions and build loyalty. These strategies often rely on the art of deception, as brands craft narratives that align with the desires and needs of their target audience, sometimes obscuring the reality of the product or service. One of the most striking examples of Machiavellian tactics in the business world is the use of corporate spin in advertising. Companies often manipulate public perception by crafting advertisements that present their products in an unrealistic or exaggerated manner. For example, the tech industry is rife with companies that promise groundbreaking innovations, only for the products to fall short of the expectations set by the marketing campaigns. Apple, known for its meticulously crafted product launches and tightly controlled media narratives, has effectively used Machiavellian strategies to create an aura of exclusivity around its products. By controlling the narrative, Apple has built a loyal customer base that is often willing to pay premium prices for their products, despite the fact that many competitors offer similar or superior technology at lower prices. Additionally, business leaders frequently employ strategic deception in negotiations. CEOs and executives may downplay their company's weaknesses or overstate their strengths to secure better terms in mergers, acquisitions, or contracts. This aligns with Machiavelli's advice to always appear stronger and more capable than one's competitors. Companies like Amazon and Google have mastered this technique, often positioning themselves as industry leaders even when their market position is not as dominant as it seems. By controlling public perception through carefully constructed brand images, these companies use Machiavellian tactics to maintain their dominance in the marketplace. Another way in which Machiavellian tactics are applied in modern business is through corporate espionage and manipulation of stock prices. Companies sometimes engage in secretive and deceptive practices to gain competitive advantages or to sabotage competitors. For example, when one company spreads rumors about a competitor's product failing or when they leak misleading information to influence stock prices, they're using deception in a manner that would likely have been familiar to Machiavelli. These tactics are often justified by the desire to succeed in a cutthroat business environment where ethics are frequently pushed aside in favor of profit. Machiavellianism is not confined to the world of politics and business. It also plays a significant role in personal relationships and social interactions. In today's social media-driven world, individuals often use deceptive tactics to manage their image and gain influence. The rise of influencer culture, for example, is built on a strategic use of personal branding, where individuals present carefully curated versions of their lives to attract followers and build a reputation. Many social media influencers engage in deceptive practices by presenting an idealized version of their lives, selectively posting moments of success and happiness while concealing struggles or failures. This manipulation of public perception mirrors Machiavellian strategies of controlling how others view you in order to gain social power. Social media also allows individuals to manipulate relationships in ways that were previously not possible. Online dating, for instance, is an arena where deception is often used to create a more attractive or appealing persona. Profiles are carefully constructed to highlight certain traits while hiding others, such as emphasizing hobbies or physical features that might make someone appear more desirable. Similarly, individuals may use social media to craft narratives about their lives, relationships, and accomplishments that may not align with reality but serve to elevate their social standing. These tactics are often intended to gain validation from others or to attract certain types of attention, whether professional, romantic, or social. In addition to individual deception, social and professional networking often involves a certain level of manipulation. People frequently use strategic deception in their personal and professional relationships to achieve goals, whether it's securing a job, gaining a promotion, or influencing others to support their ideas. For instance, in a workplace, an employee may exaggerate their contributions to a project, take credit for others' work, or present themselves as more competent or hardworking than they truly are in order to gain favor with their superiors. These Machiavellian tactics are used to manipulate others' perceptions of one's abilities and value, ultimately securing advantages for personal gain. In a world that increasingly values appearances and success over substance, Machiavellian tactics have become more integrated into daily life. Whether in politics, business, or personal interactions, the manipulation of perception and strategic deception have become normalized as individuals and organizations seek to gain the upper hand. While some argue that these tactics are a natural part of navigating modern society, they raise important ethical questions about the role of honesty, integrity, and authenticity in leadership and social interaction. At the same time, the rise of ethical leadership has emerged as a counterbalance to Machiavellian strategies. Ethical leadership emphasizes transparency, accountability, and trust, striving to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation. Leaders who adhere to ethical principles are committed to doing what is right, even if it means making difficult decisions or sacrificing short-term gains. In the digital age, ethical leadership is crucial, as the consequences of deception are magnified by the rapid spread of information. Social media and the internet provide both opportunities for manipulation and the potential for widespread exposure of dishonesty, making ethical leadership a key component of success in today's world. While Machiavellian strategies are still in play, the increasing awareness of the importance of integrity and ethical behavior suggests that leaders who prioritize honesty and transparency will be more successful in the long term. The balance between the use of Machiavellian tactics and ethical leadership will define the future of governance, business, and personal interactions. As society grapples with the impact of deception and manipulation in a hyper-connected world, the exploration of Machiavellian strategies, as outlined in The Prince, presents a fascinating look into the realpolitik of power dynamics. The strategies themselves, which often center on manipulation, deception, and pragmatism, have been both revered and criticized for their blunt approach to leadership and governance. Machiavelli's fundamental idea that power is the ultimate goal and should be maintained by any means necessary resonates across centuries and remains relevant in modern politics, business, and personal relationships. While these strategies are often seen as cynical or ruthless, they also offer valuable insights into human behavior and the realities of leadership. However, it is essential to understand these tactics responsibly, ethically, and with consideration of their long-term implications. At the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy lies the idea of the necessary evil, a concept that allows for the use of deception, manipulation, and even cruelty to secure power and achieve political objectives. The key takeaway from The Prince is that rulers and leaders must be able to adapt to their environment, think strategically, and use all available tools to achieve their goals. This includes, at times, appearing more virtuous than they actually are or engaging in deceptive practices to mislead adversaries or the public. While these tactics can bring short-term success, the enduring consequences of betrayal, broken trust, and moral compromise are significant and should not be underestimated. One critical point that emerges from Machiavellian strategies is the idea of balancing power with responsibility. Although deception can be a powerful tool for achieving strategic goals, it is essential to use it wisely and responsibly. In today's world, where information spreads quickly and public opinion can be manipulated through social media, the consequences of deception are magnified. Political leaders, business executives, and even individuals in personal relationships must be conscious of the ethical ramifications of their actions. Machiavelli himself recognized that, while deception could be effective, a leader must also be careful not to lose the trust of those they lead, as trust is the cornerstone of effective leadership. As much as Machiavelli advocates for the necessity of power at all costs, the modern world increasingly places value on transparency, honesty, and ethical leadership. The rise of digital communication, social media, and public scrutiny has made it much more difficult to maintain deceptive narratives without consequences. In today's interconnected world, where news spreads in real time and the public is often quick to hold leaders accountable, the ability to manipulate perceptions and control narratives is not as foolproof as it once was. For leaders who still rely on Machiavellian tactics, the risk of exposure and the resulting loss of public trust can be catastrophic. The lesson, then, is that while Machiavellian strategies may be effective in achieving short-term goals, the long-term consequences of unethical behavior are severe, and maintaining trust and integrity is more crucial than ever. One of the most important lessons to be drawn from the application of Machiavellian tactics is the need for ethical leadership. Ethical leadership does not dismiss the value of strategic thinking or pragmatism, but it emphasizes the importance of transparency, accountability, and honesty. In a world that often prizes results over the process, ethical leaders must demonstrate the courage to make difficult decisions that prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term gains. They must also be committed to building relationships based on trust, mutual respect, and shared values, rather than manipulation and deceit. This approach is not only more sustainable, but it also helps foster a culture of integrity that can inspire others and create lasting success. To apply Machiavellian strategies responsibly, one must first understand the principles of power dynamics and human behavior that underlie them. Machiavelli's insights into the nature of authority, fear, love, and manipulation are timeless because they speak to fundamental aspects of human nature: our desires, our fears, and our interactions with others. However, applying these strategies without considering their ethical implications can lead to a loss of moral compass and a breakdown of trust. Responsible use of Machiavellian tactics involves using them not as a way to exploit or control others, but as a means of navigating complex situations with a deep understanding of power and its impact on people. This requires self-awareness, empathy, and the ability to balance ambition with ethical responsibility. Another vital lesson from the Prince is the importance of adaptability in leadership. Machiavelli emphasizes that rulers must be flexible and willing to change tactics depending on the situation. In the modern world, where circumstances can shift rapidly and unpredictably, leaders must be able to pivot, adjust their strategies, and make decisions based on real-time information. However, this flexibility must be guided by a strong sense of ethics and transparency. Leaders who adapt to challenges by prioritizing their own power at the expense of honesty and integrity may win battles, but they will ultimately lose the trust and respect of those they lead. Machiavellianism, when practiced responsibly, can provide invaluable insights into the realities of power and leadership. It offers a roadmap for understanding the intricate balance between strength and strategy, manipulation and transparency, fear and love. However, it also serves as a warning against the dangers of unchecked ambition and the destructive power of deceit. Modern leaders must learn to navigate these challenges by embracing ethical practices that build trust and credibility while still being capable of strategic thinking and adaptation. The world we live in today may require more than just the application of Machiavellian tactics. It requires a commitment to leadership that is rooted in transparency, fairness, and a genuine concern for the welfare of others. Ultimately, the key takeaway from Machiavellian strategies is the importance of understanding power dynamics and human behavior. While deception may still be a tool used in the political, business, and personal realms, leaders must recognize the ethical cost of such actions. In a world where public perception is increasingly shaped by social media and instant communication, the stakes of deception are higher than ever. Trust, integrity, and ethical leadership have become more valuable assets than ever before. Leaders who prioritize these values alongside their strategic thinking will not only achieve success, but also build lasting relationships and create a positive impact on their organizations, communities, and societies. By using Machiavellian strategies judiciously and with awareness of their moral implications, leaders can effectively navigate the complex world of power, influence, and governance. At the same time, they must remain steadfast in their commitment to building trust, transparency, and ethical behavior. In the end, it is not just the strategies that matter, but the integrity with which they are applied that will define the success of leaders in today's world. So, what have we learned from Machiavelli's strategies? And how can we apply them responsibly in today's world? Whether in politics, business, or even personal relationships, the Machiavellian blueprint still holds a powerful place in modern society. Deception, manipulation, and strategic thinking are more relevant than ever, especially in the age of social media, where perception is often reality. But we also can't ignore the harsh realities of these tactics, the toll they take on trust, relationships, and the very fabric of social and political systems. Machiavelli taught us that power is everything, and the lengths a leader must go to maintain it are sometimes shocking. However, we also saw that using deception without a moral compass or transparency can be dangerous, leading to broken relationships, lost trust, and ultimately, the destruction of power itself. So, what's the key takeaway? Power may be gained through manipulation and deception, but it's lost just as easily when the truth is revealed. What does this mean for modern leaders, politicians, and even businesses? The lesson is clear. While Machiavellian tactics can provide a short-term edge, true leadership, whether in politics, business, or personal life, requires transparency, trust, and ethical behavior. Machiavelli's strategies may still work, but the cost of using them recklessly is often too high. So, let me know your thoughts. Do you think Machiavellian strategies have a place in modern leadership? Have you seen examples of these tactics used effectively or destructively? Drop a comment below, and let's talk about it. If you enjoyed today's video and want to see more in-depth content like this, like the video, share it with anyone who needs to know more about Machiavellianism in the modern world, and don't forget to subscribe. And, as always, your support means the world to us. If you can, click on that super thanks button and show your appreciation. It helps us keep producing content that you love and gives us the chance to dive even deeper into topics that matter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.